Now it's time to actually create our very first Spring Boot application. To do that, let's just fire up the IntelliJ first. Okay, now let's click Create New Project. And as you can see, IDEA provided us a window that has Spring Initializer. Spring Initializer is what we're going to use to create our project and all the other projects that we're going to develop in the future. Before I go into details of Initializer, now let's just create our project and I'll tell you more about in the next section. So as you can see, we're going to select our SDK and you can choose the version that you installed on your machine. Initializer is using a URL. It's start.spring.io. So you can just leave all as is and now let's click Next. Okay, here we're going to define our project. If you're familiar with Maven, you have to define a group and you have to give an artifact name for your project. Don't worry if you don't know what artifact or group is. We're going to get to that in the Maven section. So for now, you can just use com.example demo and we're going to select the Maven project, and for packaging we're going to use jar, not war, because that's why even Spring Boot exists. And we're going to use Java 1.8 and language is of course Java. So you can just leave everything as is and we can now click Next. And as you can see, we have lots of dependencies here to choose from. In our future applications, we're going to choose lots of different dependencies. But for now, for our first project, we're just going to use a web. And now let's click Next. We're going to just define our project details for the module location, file locations, etc. So our project name for demo is just fine. And for the location, you can choose any location in your computer. It's all up to you. So for the module name, we're just going to have to change it to our root module so we can have all our projects under a certain directory. So let's just copy that. If your content root and module file location isn't like this structure, you just have to replace it, or you can have different modules and different roots for every other project that we're going to develop. It's all up to you. I'm just trying to use a convention here. It's not something that's paramount important. So we can now just create our project and now let's click Finish. As you can see, IntelliJ provides us some useful tips when the application starts. You can learn lots of different options and lots of different great features of IntelliJ right here. So I just suggest you that don't close it like this and have it open whenever you use the IntelliJ. So now let's close this and check out our project structure. As you can see, Maven says that projects need to be imported. So what this says is that whenever you change the structure of your Maven, let's say you add a new dependency to your project or you do anything else, just change your Maven file, the POM file. What auto import does that is fetches the dependencies that you changed and maybe removes the ones that you get rid of. All sort of things is handled by this auto import option. So I highly encourage you to do that. So let's do that now. And as you can see, IntelliJ is resolving dependencies of demo. Now let's check out the structure of our code. Our source file has two subdirectories. One is the main and the other one is the test. Main has all the implementation, all the actual code that you write. And the test is for unit testing. So now let's just go to Java, and here we have the demo application. This is what Spring Auto generates. This class is going to be our starting point for our Spring Boot application. As you can see, and as we've talked about this before, Spring Boot has its own annotation. It's Spring Boot application annotation, as you can see here. In the resources files, you can see that we have application.properties, and it's empty now. So, how do we run this application? To run your application, all you have to do is just run. As you can see, our first application is starting. Okay, our application started. That's great, it's running on port 8080. Alright, we've started our very first application. Isn't that great? But as you can see, it's just doing nothing currently. So let's have something running and see our application in the action. To do that, and just for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm just going to create a new class in here and have a controller to serve a request. Let's create an anonymous class and expose it as a web method. So now let's create a test controller and have a method that's going to return string, and it's going to say hello. To have this class as a web method, first we start saying that it's a REST controller, and we have to give it a path, root path, and that's going to be request mapping. And in the request mapping, we say the path is going to be just a backslash. So what this method is going to do is that it's going to take a string as an argument and just return that hello and whatever you name it. Okay? So let's just expose this method as a web method. To do that, we're going to use request mapping again and say our method is going to be hello, and we say that hello, and we're going to get the name as the argument. Okay, and this method is going to be a get method. Okay, it's there. So now there's just one thing left that we have to do. We have to say that this string argument is going to be a path variable so that we can get it from the path. And to say that it's an actual path variable, we're going to use the value parameter. So we're going to say that this is going to be mapped with name. Okay? So we're good to go. Rerun the application. Okay, it's up, and as you can see, our new method is mapped as a get method and with a test controller. So to test this out, I'm just going to fire up the Firefox. So let's just go to our application. Let's say localhost 8080 and hello. So this is our root path, and we have to pass a parameter. You can just use your name, anything, and I'm just going to use mine, and let's hit enter. Here we go. We have our first Spring Boot application up and running.